The afternoon sun was sinking behind the red cliffs when everything changed for Lena. She had been walking alone for hours, trying to find her way back to the small cabin she shared with her uncle. The land around her was wide and silent, filled with dry grass, scattered rocks, and the wind that came and went like a whisper. Lena had traveled these paths many times before, but that day she made a mistake. She stepped on a loose stone hidden under the sand, slipped down a short slope, and landed hard on her side. A sharp piece of rock cut deep into her leg. At first she tried to stand, but the pain struck her so suddenly that she dropped back to the ground. Her breath trembled as she looked at the wound. Blood pooled quickly, dark and frightening. She tore part of her sleeve to press against it, but the bleeding did not stop. A wave of worry swept through her. Night would arrive soon, and she knew she couldn't walk far on her own. The cabin was still many miles away. She whispered to herself, "Stay calm, stay calm." But her hands were shaking. The wind pushed through the brush, carrying the faint cry of distant birds. She listened, hoping to hear her uncle's voice or the sound of hooves, but there was nothing. The silence felt heavier than the wound. Minutes passed, or maybe longer. She couldn't tell. The sun dipped lower, and shadows stretched across the land. The fear of being alone at night began to grow inside her. She had heard stories about coyotes, cold winds, and the dangers of traveling in the dark. She swallowed, trying to push the fear away. She needed to stay awake. She needed help. Then she heard something, soft footsteps on the dirt. Her heart jumped. She turned her head slowly, unsure of what she might see. A figure appeared from behind a cluster of rocks, moving carefully and without noise. His clothes were simple, made from natural materials that blended with the colors of the land. His long, dark hair was tied back, and the way he walked showed he was used to moving through open country. When he noticed her, he paused. Lena felt her breath tighten. She didn't know him, and she didn't know if he meant harm or help. But she could not run, even if she wanted to. Her injured leg made sure of that. The man approached slowly, lowering himself to one knee a few steps away, as if to show he had no reason to frighten her. His eyes studied her wound with quiet concern, not with judgment. "You are hurt," he said gently. His voice was calm and steady. Lena nodded, her throat tight. I fell. The rock cut me." He looked around the area, then back at her. "You cannot stay here. Night is coming. The cold will be strong, and the animals travel then." His words were not meant to scare her. They sounded like simple truth. Still, her fear rose again because she knew she had little choice. He moved closer, still slow and careful, and examined the wound without touching it yet. Lena winced as even the movement of air over the cut made her leg feel like fire. "Will it hurt?" she whispered, the question slipping out before she could stop herself. "Please, be gentle." "I will be careful," he assured her. His tone was steady, almost warm. "But the wound must be cleaned. If it is not treated, you may fall sick." Lena bit her lip and nodded. She trusted his calmness more than she expected to. There was something steady about him, like he had tended to many wounds before and understood pain without being careless with it. The man, an Apache scout traveling alone, reached into the small leather pouch he carried. He took out a bundle of herbs, a small clay container, and strips of clean cloth. His movements were smooth and practiced, as if he had prepared these items many times for himself or others. He tore open the herbs and crushed them gently between his fingers, releasing a soft, earthy scent that drifted into the evening air. Lena watched him, trying to quiet the pounding of her heart. She had heard stories about Apache people, some filled with fear and misunderstanding, but she had never met one before. Now here she was, alone with him in a wide, silent landscape, placing her safety in his hands. He met her eyes briefly. "Breathe slowly," he said. "It will help." She nodded and followed his instruction. The deep breaths steadied her a little, though her hands still trembled on the ground. He poured a bit of water over the wound to clean it. The cold liquid stung sharply, and she gasped, gripping the dirt beneath her fingers. "I know," he murmured, his voice still calm. "It will pass. Stay with me." His reassurance helped more than she expected. She focused on his voice rather than the pain. Next, he pressed the crushed herbs around the wound. The mixture burned at first, then slowly turned into a cool numbness that spread across her skin. She closed her eyes and let out a shaking breath. Relief washed through her. "You are strong," the man said quietly, tying the cloth around the wound to hold the herbs in place. Many would cry out loudly, "But you hold steady." Lena almost laughed at that. "It doesn't feel steady," she whispered. "That is because you measure yourself by fear," he replied gently. "But fear is only a moment. What you choose after is what shows strength." His words sank into her, warmer than the evening sun. When he finished bandaging her leg, he helped her sit up with slow, deliberate movements so she didn't feel sudden pain. She leaned on her hands, breathing heavily but no longer shaking. "Thank you," she said softly. I didn't know what to do." "You called for help with your eyes," he said. "I heard that." Lena wasn't sure what he meant, but the sincerity in his voice made her chest feel tight, not with fear this time, but with a strange sense of safety. He looked toward the darkening horizon. "You cannot walk far," he said. "My camp is near. You will rest there tonight. In the morning I will take you to your home." Lena hesitated for only a moment. She was raised to be cautious, but she could not deny that he had already saved her from danger, and she could not make it back alone. "I'll go with you," she said quietly. He nodded once, not demanding, not pressuring, simply acknowledging her choice. Then he slid one arm behind her back and the other beneath her knees, lifting her carefully so her injured leg stayed steady. She clung to his shoulder out of instinct, surprised by how easily he held her weight. The land around them grew cooler as the sun finally dipped below the cliffs. The first stars blinked into the sky. As he carried her toward a place she had never seen, Lena realized that this unexpected meeting, born from fear, pain, and uncertainty, had brought her something she had not expected in the middle of nowhere. A sense that she was not alone, and she wondered what the night ahead would reveal about the quiet Apache who had treated her with such careful kindness. The sky had grown darker by the time the Apache scout carried Lena across the open land. The soft glow of the fading sunset clung to the edges of the cliffs behind them, but ahead lay a deep blue night sprinkled with early stars. Lena tried to steady her breathing as she rested in his arms. Every movement sent a small ache through her injured leg, but it was far better than the pain she felt earlier. The herbs he used left her leg cool and numbed, and she felt safer than she had since her fall. The man walked with steady steps, careful not to jolt her. Lena noticed how his eyes moved constantly, watching the ground, scanning the horizon, checking the shadows. He seemed to understand the land in a way she never could. She realized he wasn't just strong, he was aware, alert, and completely in tune with his surroundings. It gave her comfort, knowing he wouldn't let danger come near without noticing it first. After a long stretch of silence, Lena spoke softly. Do you live far from here?" "Not far," he replied, his voice calm as always. "My camp is hidden between the rocks. The wind does not reach it much, and the cold is less strong." Lena nodded. She didn't know what to say after that. Everything still felt strange, being injured, being helped by a stranger, and now being carried through the night. But for some reason she felt no fear of him. She only felt uncertain about what would happen next. The night sounds grew louder as they walked. Crickets chirped in steady rhythms, and the distant call of an owl echoed somewhere far away. The gentle breeze carried the smell of dry earth and desert plants. Lena had always found the land beautiful, but tonight it felt different, larger, deeper, more mysterious. After a few more minutes, the man slowed his steps and nodded toward a small cluster of tall rocks ahead. "My camp is there," he said. "We will reach it soon." As they approached, Lena noticed a faint, warm glow tucked between the rocks, a small fire burning low as if waiting for someone to return. When he stepped into the shelter of the rocks, Lena saw a simple camp set up there. A neatly laid-out bed made of woven blankets, a small pile of wood, a water pouch, and a few tools placed with care. Everything was tidy and organized. He set her down on one of the blankets, making sure her injured leg stayed stretched out comfortably. The fire crackled softly nearby, offering gentle warmth against the cool night air. Lena sighed as she settled onto the blanket, grateful to rest at last. "You should drink," he said as he handed her a small water pouch. "The fall and the pain would have taken your strength." She accepted it with both hands and drank slowly. The water tasted fresh and clean, and she realized how thirsty she had been. When she handed it back, she whispered, "Thank you." He nodded once, then began tending to the fire, adding a few pieces of wood and adjusting the stones around it to make the heat spread evenly. Lena watched him, noticing the calm, thoughtful way he moved. Everything he did seemed precise and purposeful. After a moment, he sat down across from her and said, "My name is Tahoe." Lena hesitated for a moment before replying, "I'm Lena." The firelight reflected gently in his eyes as he repeated, "Lena." The way he said her name was simple, but respectful, as if he understood it was important. A quiet moment passed between them. The warmth of the fire mixed with the cool night breeze, creating a peaceful atmosphere. Strange, considering how worried she had been earlier. Tahoe broke the silence. "You were far from home," he said. "Why were you walking alone?" Lena lowered her gaze. "My uncle and I live in a cabin near the river. He left early this morning to trade supplies. I thought I could gather plants near the cliffs before he came back, but I lost track of time. And then I slipped." Tahoe nodded slowly, understanding more than she said. "The land can be kind or unforgiving," he said. "One must listen to it." She gave a small, embarrassed smile. "I guess I wasn't listening very well today." He didn't laugh at her. He didn't make her feel foolish. Instead, he said, "You learned. That is enough." Lena felt her chest warm at his gentle reassurance. She pulled the blanket closer around herself and looked up at the stars above. They shone bright and steady, like tiny lanterns scattered across the sky. The fire crackled softly, keeping the night air from becoming too cold. After a while, Tahoe stood up and walked over to a small clay bowl near his supplies. He poured water into it, then began mixing some crushed herbs inside. The smell rose into the air, earthy, cool, and slightly sweet. He returned to her side. "I must check your wound again," he said quietly. "The bleeding has stopped, but the herbs need to settle well." Lena nodded, trying to appear brave. She didn't want him to think she was weak or frightened. But when he gently lifted the cloth covering her wound, she felt her breath catch from the sting. Tahoe noticed immediately. "Breathe slowly," he said again. "You do well." She followed his words, inhaling and exhaling in deep, steady breaths. The pain lessened, and she relaxed a little. He worked carefully, applying the mixture with slow movements. His touch was gentle, almost thoughtful, and he never rushed. Lena realized he must have treated many wounds before. "You're very skilled," she said quietly. I learned from my mother, he replied. She taught me how the land heals. Plants speak if you know how to listen. Lena watched the way his hands moved, steady and sure. Your mother must be very wise. She was, he answered softly. Her knowledge guides me still. There was a quiet sadness in his tone, and Lena didn't ask more. She didn't need to. She understood that his mother was no longer with him, and this knowledge shaped him deeply. When he finished with her leg, Tahoe secured the cloth again and sat back. The pain will ease soon, he said. You must rest. Lena nodded, though she didn't feel tired yet. Her mind was full of questions, full of gratitude, full of the strange comfort she felt in this place. Will we leave for my home tomorrow? She asked. Yes, he said. When the sun rises, but tonight you must sleep. If your body rests, you will heal faster. She lowered herself onto the blanket, keeping her injured leg comfortable. The fire warmed her face, and the night breeze cooled her back. Tahoe moved to sit near the opening between the rocks, keeping watch on the land outside. You're not sleeping? She asked softly. I will rest later, he replied. I must stay awake. Night carries its own dangers. Lena felt a wave of gratitude wash over her. You don't have to stay up all night because of me. He turned his head slightly, his face calm in the firelight. I choose to. You are under my care now. His words struck her in a quiet but powerful way. She felt safe, truly safe, in a way she hadn't expected. She settled more comfortably under the blanket. The fire crackled softly. The stars gleamed overhead. Tahoe's silent figure watched the land with steady eyes. As sleep slowly took hold of her, Lena realized something surprising. She was no longer frightened. She was no longer alone, and deep in the quiet of the night, she wondered what tomorrow would bring. What she would learn about the calm, watchful Apache who had appeared at the moment she needed help the most, and what new path their unexpected meeting might create. The first light of dawn slowly crept across the sky, painting soft lines of pink and gold over the quiet land. Lena's eyes opened gently, and for a moment she did not remember where she was. The blanket beneath her felt softer than the one she had at home, and the smell of the herbs around her was comforting. Then she noticed the tall rocks, the small fire reduced to glowing embers, and the silent figure sitting near the opening of the camp. Tahoe. He had remained awake through the night. He sat with his back straight, his eyes watching the land as if he had not grown tired at all. The morning breeze moved through his hair, and the calm expression on his face made him look like a part of the land itself. Still, quiet, steady. Lena pushed herself up slowly, trying not to move her injured leg too much. The moment she shifted, Tahoe turned his head toward her. His eyes softened a little, as if he had been waiting for her to wake. You slept well, he said in his quiet voice. She nodded. Yes. I think I did. She rubbed her eyes, surprised at how rested she felt. Did you sleep at all? Later, he answered simply. It wasn't a complaint, just a fact. Lena looked down at her bandaged leg. The pain was still there, but it was dull and bearable instead of sharp and frightening. The herbs had worked well. Does it hurt? Tahoe asked, noticing her expression. A little, she admitted, but much less than before. He nodded, pleased. The herbs did their work. The wound is clean. You will heal. Just then, the morning breeze carried a faint smell of something warm. Tahoe reached beside him and lifted a small clay pot. Inside, something was heating over the last glow of the fire. I made morning food, he said. It will help your strength. Lena smiled with a mixture of gratitude and surprise. You didn't have to do all this. I did, he replied simply. You needed it. He handed her a wooden bowl filled with a warm mixture of grains and crushed nuts. Lena ate slowly, and with each bite she felt herself grow stronger. The food tasted simple but nourishing, and somehow comforting in a way she couldn't explain. For a few moments, they sat in silence, listening to the soft songs of early birds greeting the morning. The land that had felt so frightening the day before now felt peaceful. After she finished eating, Tahoe stood and walked toward her leg. "I must see the wound again before we leave," he said. Lena nodded and lay back a little so he could reach. He untied the cloth with the same gentle care as before, checking the cut with calm eyes. The herbs had reduced the swelling, and the bleeding had completely stopped. "You heal well," he said, "but we must go slowly today. You cannot put much weight on your leg." She felt relieved, but also nervous. How far is my cabin?" "A few hours' walk," he answered. "But I will make the journey easier for you." Lena looked at him, unsure what he meant. "How?" He stood up and went to a sturdy branch he had placed near the fire. Using a stone blade and strips of soft leather, he had shaped it into a walking stick with a smooth handle. "I made this for you," he said. "You can use it to move without hurting your leg too much." Lena accepted it, touched by the care he had shown. "Thank you. It's beautiful." He shook his head lightly. "It is simple, but strong." She stood very slowly, testing the stick. It supported her weight well, and although she felt a pull in her leg when she moved, it was manageable. Tahoe watched her carefully. "Walk only as much as you must," he said. "If it becomes too painful, tell me." Lena nodded. "I will." They packed the camp quickly. Tahoe moved with practiced efficiency, rolling blankets, tying them with rope, and placing his tools back in his pouch. Lena watched him, admiring how organized and focused he was. It was clear he had lived this way for a long time. When they were ready, Tahoe stepped beside her. "We go," he said. They began walking slowly across the land. The morning sun warmed their backs, and the long shadows of the rocks stretched across the ground. Lena followed Tahoe's steady pace, leaning on the walking stick for support. Her leg throbbed at times, but she pushed through, determined not to slow them down too much. Tahoe walked slightly ahead, clearing the safest path and watching for uneven ground. Every few steps he looked back to make sure she was managing well. "You don't have to walk so slowly for me," Lena said once, feeling a little embarrassed. He gave a small, almost unnoticeable smile. "I walk at the pace of the one who needs the journey most." She felt her cheeks warm at his calm kindness. As they continued, the land around them changed. The tall rocks faded behind them, replaced by wide stretches of grass and scattered clusters of desert plants. The wind carried new scents, faint, fresh, almost sweet. Lena found herself growing curious. "Tahoe, why were you traveling alone last night?" He glanced at the horizon before answering. "I was returning from a long journey. I went to trade herbs with another camp and bring back supplies. I plan to rest before moving to the next valley." "Were you far from your people?" she asked. "Not far," he said, "but I travel alone often. I know the paths well." Lena thought about this. "Doesn't it get lonely?" For a moment, he didn't answer. Then he said, "Sometimes. But the land speaks in its own way. It keeps you company if you listen." His words were thoughtful, almost poetic. Lena admired the peace he seemed to carry within him. After another long stretch of walking, Lena felt her leg begin to ache more deeply. She slowed, trying not to show it, but Tahoe noticed immediately. "Stop," he said gently. "Rest." She lowered herself onto a flat rock with his help, grateful for the break. He crouched beside her and checked her wound through the cloth, making sure the herbs were still doing their work. "It is good," he said, "but you must not push too hard." Lena looked down at her hands. "I feel like I'm slowing you down." Tahoe shook his head. "You are not slowing me. You are moving with courage. That is enough." His words lifted some of the heaviness inside her. As they rested, she asked softly, "Why did you help me, Tahoe? You didn't know me. You could have walked past." He met her eyes with the same steady calm he always had. "You were hurt," he said plainly. "You needed help, and my path led me to you." Lena held his gaze for a moment. There was no pride in his words, no boasting, just simple truth. He did what he believed was right, nothing more. They continued once more when her leg felt better. The sun rose higher, warming the earth. Birds flew in the distance, and the sound of running water reached their ears. Tahoe pointed ahead. "The river," he said. "Your home is across it." Lena felt a surge of relief. "We're close?" "Yes," he said. "We will reach your cabin before midday." When they reached the riverbank, the clear water sparkled under the sunlight. Lena dipped her fingers into the water and felt its cool freshness. Tahoe filled their water pouch and helped her drink before they crossed. The sound of the flowing river, the warmth of the sun, and the steady presence of Tahoe by her side created a strange peace inside her, like the land, and her fear and her pain had all begun to settle. As they made their way up the small hill on the other side, Lena saw the familiar outline of her cabin in the distance. Her heart lifted. She was almost home. But at the same time, a quiet thought formed inside her, an unexpected thought. When she reached her cabin, would she feel as safe without Tahoe nearby? She didn't know the answer, but she knew that this journey, painful, quiet, and filled with small moments of understanding, had changed something inside her. And the closer they walked to her home, the more she realized that her gratitude toward the calm Apache who walked beside her ran deeper than she knew. The sun stood high in the sky when Lena and Tahoe finally reached the small hill overlooking her cabin. The wooden home sat quietly beside a few tall trees, with smoke rising gently from the chimney. It looked peaceful, familiar, and safe. Yet Lena felt a strange mixture of comfort and sadness wash through her at the sight of it. She should have felt only relief, but instead her heart tightened just a little. Tahoe stopped beside her, letting her take in the view. His eyes moved across the land as if checking for any sign of danger. When he was sure everything was calm, he said softly, "Your home waits for you." Lena nodded. "Yes, it does." But she didn't move right away. She simply stood there, leaning slightly on the walking stick he made for her, staring at the cabin she had missed so much. For a moment, she wished she had just one more hour of walking, one more hour of quiet conversation, one more hour of his steady presence beside her. She tried to push the thought away. It felt foolish, since they had only met the day before, but it stayed inside her anyway. After a moment, she said, "My uncle must be home. He'll be worried." Tahoe nodded again. "He will be glad you return." Together they made their way down the hill. As they approached the cabin, Lena saw the door swing open and her uncle, a broad-shouldered older man with kind eyes, stepped out. The moment he saw her, his face filled with shock, and then relief so strong it looked like he might fall to his knees. "Lena!" he cried, rushing toward her. She held out a hand. "Uncle, it's okay. Just go slow." He reached her, cupping her face in his large hands. "You're hurt," he said, worry thick in his voice. "Where were you? What happened?" "I fell," she said gently. "I cut my leg. I couldn't walk. But Tahoe found me and helped me." Her uncle looked at Tahoe, who stood calmly beside her, saying nothing. For a long moment, he studied the man who had brought his niece home safely. Lena could see her uncle trying to understand who he was, what happened, and how he had protected his niece in the wild. Then her uncle stepped forward and placed a hand over his chest in a gesture of deep respect. "Thank you," he said sincerely. "You have helped my family. I owe you more than words." Tahoe bowed his head slightly. "She needed help," he said simply. He made it sound like nothing, but Lena knew it had been everything. Her uncle guided her inside with gentle hands, asking more questions, but Tahoe did not follow. He remained outside, waiting politely, as if he wanted to be sure he wouldn't intrude. After her uncle helped her sit in a chair and brought her water, Lena looked toward the open doorway. "Tahoe is still outside," she said softly. Her uncle frowned with confusion. "Why? He brought you home. He should rest inside. The sun is hot today." Lena shook her head. "He's respectful. He won't enter unless invited." Her uncle went to the doorway and called out, "You are welcome here, friend." Tahoe stepped forward but did not enter fully. He stood quietly, waiting for permission to speak. Lena's uncle turned to her. "Tell me what happened," he said more gently this time. Lena explained everything, from her fall to the cold fear of the night, to the herbs Tahoe used, to how he stayed awake watching over her. Her uncle listened with growing gratitude, shaking his head at the bravery and dedication of the stranger. When she finished, her uncle placed a hand on Tahoe's shoulder. "You saved my niece's life," he said. "This home is open to you whenever you pass through this land." Tahoe bowed his head again, but did not smile. "I did what honor required," he said quietly. She was alone and hurt. Lena watched him carefully. His face remained calm, but there was something gentle in his eyes, something she had seen since the moment he first knelt beside her in the desert. Her uncle prepared a small meal and insisted Tahoe eat with them. For a moment, Tahoe looked unsure, but Lena's soft nod encouraged him. He sat at the table, though he kept his posture straight and respectful, as if afraid to take up too much space. Lena found herself smiling at that. He had slept on cold ground, watched the land through the entire night, and carried her for miles. Yet he behaved like he did not want to inconvenience anyone. While they ate, Lena tried not to stare at him too much, but she couldn't help noticing the way he moved. Quiet, steady, thoughtful. He ate little, perhaps out of politeness, and thanked her uncle for every simple thing offered to him. Her uncle asked, "Your journey, were you heading somewhere important?" Tahoe said, "I was returning to my people. They wait in the next valley." Lena felt a small tightening in her chest. She knew he had to leave eventually, but hearing it out loud made it feel more real. After the meal, her uncle checked her wound. He admired the herbal mixture and nodded approvingly. "You know your medicine well," he told Tahoe. Tahoe remained humble. "My mother taught me," he replied softly. Her uncle looked at the bandage. "This will heal well. She is lucky you found her." Lena smiled. "I know." When she tried to stand, her leg trembled. Tahoe immediately stepped toward her, catching her elbow to steady her. His touch was careful, almost feather-light, but strong enough to hold her upright. "You must rest," he said. She nodded, though a part of her did not want him to leave her side. Her uncle helped her to the bed, but before she lay down, she looked at Tahoe and said quietly, "Please don't go yet." Her uncle stepped outside to gather wood, giving them a moment alone. Tahoe stood near the doorway, watching her with calm eyes. "You are safe now," he said. "Your uncle will care for you." "I know," she said, her voice softer than she intended. "But I wanted to thank you again." "There is no need," he said. "Yes, there is," she insisted gently. "You stayed with me through the night. You walked slowly so I wouldn't suffer. You made me a walking stick. You kept the fire warm. You cared, even though you didn't have to." Tahoe looked down briefly, as if unsure how to respond. When he lifted his gaze again, there was a warmth in his eyes Lena hadn't seen before. Something quiet, something thoughtful. "You are strong," he said. "You trusted me. That is not something many would do." Lena's heart fluttered in a strange, unfamiliar way. "I trusted you because you were kind." He shook his head slightly. "Kindness is simple. Anyone can offer it, but not everyone does," she said. Silence settled between them, soft, gentle, and full of unspoken understanding. At last, Tahoe said, "When your leg heals, you will walk your land again. You will not fall." Lena smiled. "I'll listen to the land better next time." He nodded. "Good." She rested back on her pillow, watching him. He looked toward the door as if preparing to leave. "You will go now?" she asked quietly. "I should return to my people," he said. "They will wonder where I have been." "Oh," she whispered, feeling a small ache inside her chest. But before she could say anything else, Tahoe added softly, "But I will not leave until you are resting. Your strength must come back first." Warmth filled her heart. She hadn't expected him to stay even a moment longer, yet he did. Not because he had to, but because he truly cared. Lena settled under the blankets. Her eyes grew heavy and the herb's calming scent drifted gently through the room. Tahoe stood near the doorway, silent and steady, watching over her just as he had watched over her by the fire the night before. As sleep pulled her in, one last thought drifted through her mind. She hoped this wasn't the last time she saw him. She hoped their paths would cross again, because somewhere between the pain of her fall and the safety of her cabin, something had grown quietly between them, something she didn't yet understand, but felt deeply, like a warm light in her chest. And even as her eyes closed, she knew one thing for certain. Tahoe had walked into her life by chance, but she would remember him for a long time. The soft afternoon light filled the small cabin when Lena finally woke again. Her leg felt warm but not painful, and her body felt rested in a way she hadn't expected. For a moment, she simply lay still, listening to the peaceful sounds around her. Quiet birds outside, the crackling of a small fire inside, and the steady rhythm of her own breathing. Then she realized something. The chair beside her bed was empty. Tahoe wasn't sitting there anymore. Her heart sank a little before she even understood why. She slowly pushed herself upright, careful not to pull at her injured leg too much, and looked around the room. Her uncle was outside chopping wood. The door was open, letting in fresh air, but Tahoe was not in sight. She swallowed softly, telling herself not to feel disappointed. He had his own people to return to. He had already given her more help than she could have asked for, but still, she wished she could see him once more before he left. With effort, she stood and used the walking stick to steady herself. She walked toward the doorway and leaned against the frame, looking around the yard. Her uncle noticed her and quickly set down the axe. "Lena, you should be resting," he said, rushing over to help her. She shook her head gently. "I'm all right. I thought Tahoe might still be here." Her uncle's expression softened. He nodded toward the trees near the edge of their land. "He went to check the river. He said he would return in a moment." A breath of relief escaped her chest before she could stop it. She didn't want to seem eager, but her chest felt lighter knowing he hadn't slipped away without a goodbye. Her uncle guided her to a chair outside so she could sit in the fresh air. The sunlight warmed her face, and the gentle breeze carried the smell of pine and river water. After a few minutes, she saw movement between the trees. Tahoe emerged from the shade, walking calmly toward the cabin. Lena watched him quietly, noticing how naturally he moved with the land, as if he belonged to the world outside more than any cabin or village. His expression was steady, but when his eyes found hers, something softer passed through them. He approached and bowed his head respectfully. "You are awake?" "Yes," she said, her voice light. "I didn't see you when I opened my eyes." "I did not want to disturb your rest," he said, "but I stayed close." Lena smiled slowly. "I'm glad you did." Her uncle gave them space by returning to his work. Tahoe stepped closer, stopping just in front of her. "How does your leg feel?" he asked. "Better," she replied. "Still a little weak, but the pain is much less." "Good," he said. "It will heal well." Silence stretched between them, not uncomfortable, just full of things neither knew how to say yet. Finally, Lena asked softly, "Will you go back today?" Tahoe looked down briefly, then back at her with honesty in his eyes. "Yes," he said simply. "My people expect my return." She nodded, swallowing a small ache in her throat. She had known this moment would come, but knowing didn't make it easier. She didn't want him to feel tied to her. She didn't want to keep him from his path. But she also didn't want to pretend that she didn't care. He seemed to sense her thoughts because he added, "Your safety was important. I stayed until I knew you were well." A pause. "Now you are." Her chest tightened with gratitude and something else, something warm and quiet that made her heart beat differently. "Thank you," she whispered, "for everything you did." Tahoe shook his head softly. "You have thanked me enough." "No," she said. "I haven't. You didn't just save me from the desert. You kept me calm. You helped me walk. You stayed awake the whole night so nothing would harm me. You brought me home." Her voice grew soft. "I won't forget that." He looked at her for a long moment, as if he were memorizing her face in the sunlight. His expression didn't change much, but his eyes held something deep. Respect, understanding, something close to warmth. "I will not forget either," he said quietly. A gentle wind brushed past them, carrying leaves across the ground. The world around them felt still, as if it understood the moment too. After a few seconds, Tahoe reached lightly into the small pouch at his side. He pulled out a thin, smooth stone shaped like a teardrop, polished by water and time until it shone softly in the light. A delicate pattern was etched on its surface, made with the tip of a stone blade. He held it out to her. "This is for you," he said. Lena blinked, surprised. "What is it?" "A river stone," he explained. "I found it last night while I waited for the sun. I carved the marks this morning. It is a symbol of safe return and continued strength." She accepted it carefully, running her thumb over the smooth surface. The design felt warm under her fingers. "It's beautiful," she whispered. "It is to remind you," he said, "that you were strong even when afraid." Emotion tightened her throat. "Thank you." "Tahoe, truly." He nodded once, but his eyes softened again. Her uncle walked over then, wiping sweat from his brow. "Tahoe," he said, "I wish to give you something in return." Tahoe raised a hand gently. "I need nothing," her uncle insisted. "You helped my family. Take at least a small gift." From a shelf inside the cabin, he brought out a wrapped bundle. Inside was a carefully made wool blanket, a warm, sturdy one that Lena's mother had made years before she passed. It was one of the family's treasured items, but her uncle offered it without hesitation. "This will keep you warm on your journey," he said. Tahoe hesitated, clearly humbled by the gift. After a moment, he accepted it with a bow of gratitude. "I will carry it with respect." Lena's heart warmed at the exchange. Two people from different worlds showing kindness to one another. It felt right. But then the quiet truth returned. Tahoe was leaving. He stepped back a little and said, "Your home is peaceful. You will heal here." Lena stood slowly, using her walking stick. She took a few careful steps until she stood only a breath away from him. "You helped me when I needed someone most," she said softly. "I hope your journey is safe. And I hope you find peace wherever you go." Tahoe held her gaze, and the moment stretched long and quiet, full of things that didn't need to be spoken aloud. "I hope the same for you," he said, his voice deep and calm. "And I hope your path stays bright." She swallowed and nodded. He shifted his blanket onto his shoulder, tightened the straps on his pack, and turned toward the open land beyond the river. He walked a few steps, then paused. Without turning fully back, he said, "If the land allows it, our paths may cross again." Lena's breath caught. "I would like that," she whispered. Tahoe nodded once, as if her words settled something inside him. Then, with the quiet confidence of someone who knew the world well, he walked away, his figure growing smaller as he moved across the open earth. Lena watched him until he disappeared into the distance. She stood there long after he was gone, the river stone resting warm in her palm. Her uncle stepped beside her. "He is a good man," he said. "Yes," Lena whispered. "He is." She held the stone tightly against her heart, because even though their meeting had lasted only a short time, it had changed something deep inside her, something she couldn't name yet, but felt strongly. She had been saved not just from danger, but from fear. She had learned trust in a stranger who had treated her with compassion. She had discovered strength she didn't know she had. And somewhere in the quiet spaces between their words and their steps, a gentle bond had formed, one that needed no promises, no declarations, no expectations, just memory, just gratitude, just respect, and maybe in the warmest corner of her heart, hope. The land was wide and full of surprises. Paths crossed for reasons no one always understood. Maybe one day, when the winds changed or the river curved a new way, she would see him again. But for now, she held the stone tightly and walked back toward her cabin. And with each careful step, she felt stronger, guided not only by the land, but by the kindness of someone who had crossed her path at exactly the right moment.